Hello, thinkers. I'm your host, Josh, and joining me today is my lovely wife, Mallory.
Hi.
So, for episode 6, we're going to talk about Kurt Vonnegut's story, the Euphio Question, I think is what it's called. The Euphio Question, sorry. And I'm going to do a brief kind of summary of what it is and then ask some questions around it. Just because.
Perfect. I've never heard it. So.
Yeah, and there's some cool philosophy things too that I want to get into, so it's kind of like a mix of things. So
okay.
I apologize in advance when I nerd out here because this is a lot of my favorite stuff.
Go for it.
Okay, so basically what this story is about is this scientist named Dr. Fred Bachman. He listens to the stars. Basically, he has an antenna that catches sound waves from the galaxies, and in doing this he discovers some frequencies that have no celestial bodies around them. So there's a local person named Lou who runs a radio station, and so he has this doctor and the narrator who's telling the story. He has no name. Never is he referred to. His wife and kid has a name, but he never has one, so it's just the narrator.
Okay.
And so he joins them on this broadcast, and during that time, Dr. Bachman decides to show his discovery. So he plays this sound, which he later calls Bachman's broadcast, something along those lines. But anyway, it later becomes Euphio. But I'll explain why that happens. So during this time, this engineer turns on the broadcast, and it's only supposed to be on for 5-ish seconds.
Okay.
But once the sound starts, everyone who's listening to it, and because it's since it's being amplified by the transmitter for the radio station, even people who weren't listening to it were being affected by this thing, but they didn't know it. So when this happens, you get a sense of euphoric sensation. So everything, you're just immediately happy. Nothing. Okay. You can't think of anything. It's just nothing.
State of euphoria.
Yeah, basically. And that's what it's at. They even call it the sound of nothingness. And the engineer accidentally trips, does something. Basically, Vonnegut says that his cuff hits the switch and shuts the sound off. And so it actually had been going on for 5 minutes.
Okay.
And after that, they all talk about how great the show it was, and usually this Lou character is kind of a jerk, but he was being sincere, saying he really enjoyed it. And then the narrator and the doctor go home, and they discover that their families are just laying around. They're like, oh, that was so amazing. They're coming down from the high that they had, and apparently all the town just stopped doing everything. The kids stopped playing baseball. They were at a tie game, 8th inning. And then, they just all stopped and decided it wasn't worth it. People who were at the store, workers, they all left, went home. And so this Lou character decides, we can make some money off this. And so he comes and meets back with the narrator and Dr. Bachman, and he comes up with all these ideas. He's like, okay, well, how about we make it smaller so you can purchase it and make money off this thing? And so they're like, okay, well, we'll test it.
Purchase your own state of euphoria.
Right, and even, there's a quote here, too, that says... Lou says, instead of turning on the radio or television, everybody's going to want to turn on the happiness. And that's on page 196. And this is a compilation of short stories. But as this goes on, they test this thing out, and everyone just immediately is happy. Other people start coming, the milkman comes, a police officer comes because the milk truck is out, and they all just lose, they have no care. Everything's great in the world. And the cop even gives his gun to the narrator's son, and he's just shooting about, and he's like, oh, this kid's gonna be a cop one day, look at him.
Oh my god.
And so they're doing all this stuff, and the doctor falls, hits his head, bad.
Okay.
And more people come.
And he's probably oh, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just oh, no big deal. And so eventually somehow the power goes out, and it turns out that these people were under the influence of this thing for 2 days. And so once they come off it, they're super hungry. The narrator was embracing his wife, but now he sees her and he says how ugly she is, how he reminds her of Medusa and all this stuff. And just says all these terrible things. And it keeps going. Eventually,
they have a great narrator.
The narrator And the doctor decided, okay, let's destroy this, and like people
Yeah.
get medical attention and things like that. Everyone turns out fine, but
So
then
the doctor lived.
yeah, he lived.
Okay, I
he-
was like, good lord, how many people died? In
no
these
one
2
died,
days?
but Lou continues to want this to be a thing, but
Sell it and make
yeah,
money,
but the
profit
doctor
off of
and
it.
the narrator destroyed the machine.
Yeah.
But Lou still
He should.
yeah, Lou still figures out a way to make it. You find out that a narrator is in front of this committee who is deciding like broadcasting commission kind of thing, and he gives this warning: men no longer pursue happiness, but buy it if they do this.
Truth.
And so eventually at the end, you find out that Lou turns the machine on, and the committee and the narrator is like, oh, actually, you know what? I hope it works out for him. And
Yeah,
so
because they were influenced by,
right. And so this kind of leads to other things. And before I go in, though, what is your initial thoughts of the story?
I think Vonnegut probably took what he was seeing in the world and made it into a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How people buy happiness and things like that. I wouldn't say that they no longer pursue happiness, but they pursue it by buying it.
Yeah.
Because, there's that saying, money can't buy happiness.
Yeah, or if you're
Ariana Grande.
just don't have enough to
You don't have enough
buy
money.
it. But, yeah, so basically, and that's one of the things I really like about Vonnegut. He's very good at taking everything around you and making it into this thing. And he's really funny, too, in this weird, abstract way. But the reason why I brought this up is because this idea of pursuing just happiness kind of goes with hedonism, which is the notion that pleasure is the only thing that's intrinsically valuable to a person at all times. Like, that's what people are striving for. But in doing that, they are making sure that the worst thing you can have is pain. So you're avoiding that at all costs, and that's what they think. And so this is kind of this story wraps around that theme. And so the first question I want to ask is, would life be better if we could have this machine in the story?
Oh, definitely not.
You don't think so?
No.
Now, they make a timer for it, so that way you set it like, let's say, 2 minutes.
Okay.
And then it goes off, and you're back to so your high, in a sense, would be gone. Would you think that's...
I don't know. So I remember having this conversation with this kid in high school, and I don't even remember his name, but I was, talking to him, and I said something about, I was feeling really tired, and my feet were hurting after marching band one day, and I was like, I wish I didn't feel any pain or anything, and he's like, you know what? He's like, I'm glad we feel pain, because then we can also know what happiness is, and what comfort is, and what feeling relaxed is, because we feel that pain.
Right. All right, 3,
But anyway,
2, you go.
Okay, but anyway, that has just always stuck with me. But you did bring up a good point about the fact of, if they only do it for a couple minutes, is it really detrimental?
Right.
I don't know. I think if they did it for a couple minutes, then they're going to be like, why can't we do it just for like an hour or two? And then once you do it for an hour or two, it's like, why can't we do it for a day? Why can't we just live in? Yeah, it's going to be an addictive feeling, like an addictive state.
Yeah, like if you could essentially eliminate all problem and all negative feelings, I feel like everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
So I feel like at that point, someone just needs to make the decision to get rid of it for good. Now, if it's coming from the stars, can you even get rid of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, someone could eventually... That's the flaw of, I guess, the story. Like, someone could... With the knowledge out there, you will always be able to get it back in some way. People just got to figure out how.
And I think it comes from that feeling of everybody wants to experience that state of euphoria.
Yeah.
And...
So much so that you want to experience it, like, in your day-to-day kind of thing at work. Like, you want to find something that's like, oh, this is something I'm passionate about. And, like, I don't know, because we kind of talked about it in psychology, but that working state, like when you're in, I call it the zone, a lot of people call it, but you're like in that, and things are fun at that point. Like, you really don't think of anything. You enjoy
what you're doing. You're invested in it.
And time flies by, and then you constantly have this, and, like, that's why time goes by so quickly. Is when you're enjoying it. Because when you're not enjoying it, it's like, oh gosh, this is taking for freaking ever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think I think, why work for it if it's at your hand, if you could just buy it? You know what I mean?
Right, you'd work to get it, and
what
then
it
once you
kind of
got
reminds me of is, and this may be not correlated at all, but that movie Ready Player One, when everyone has developed, like, they don't work because they're so invested in
their life is in the game.
Yeah, their life is like completely, because it's giving them what they want, even though it's not real.
Right, and they
that's
work
what this
in the
is.
game.
Yeah, it's like giving them the feeling that they want, even though it's not real. It's not like they earned it. It's not like they worked for it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's a good connection. And then to kind of jump off that question, like the hedonism and things, do you think you can experience emotions without ever experiencing its opposite? So, like, for example, in this, you're really only experiencing that euphoria. But in that sense, is there even a feeling anymore? Because it's just one type of like, you have nothing to compare.
If you never experience the opposite, because then what? I think I get what you're saying. So, like, so how do we know what feelings are if we've never felt the opposite? Right. Because we know what happy is because we know what sad is, and vice versa.
And that's where the hedonists come in. Yeah. You seek the good so you can avoid the bad.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, that's interesting.
Because, like, even in this story, they really don't even know they're in that state until life comes back. And I'm guessing, like, it was never talked about in it, but if they stayed in that state too long, like, 2 days, they felt extreme hunger and extreme thirst after. Yeah. If you met that point to where your body could no longer survive, you would die in that state.
But then, you wouldn't know that you were dying. Because
you wouldn't even feel it. You just kind of go. Like, that's a terrifying kind of thought to think of. Like, I guess you just cease because you're already not feeling anything. So in a sense, you are dead in that moment, right? Yeah. Because you're not feeling or thinking. Like, in the story, they're talking and interacting with each other in this state, but they don't.
But it's not real, because once they come out of it, they would not have acted or reacted
the way they
had in that state.
Right, but they do remember.
So they remember it, but nothing that they did in that state was sustainable. Right. So it's not really living. Right. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. But in terms of feeling, I think that we have feelings because we know what the opposite is. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Yeah, and it all comes back to what we talked about
labeling
a few weeks ago about, like, humans want to label things because they want to be able to have control over them, in a sense, I think. Right. And, I think we're curious by nature, and so we want to know what our feelings are. And we want to be able to name them and describe them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know, it's really, I didn't even think about this when I was initially coming up with the topic, but now, like, that sense of being in that state and, dying, you would know it's happening, but you wouldn't have the fear of it happening. So that's just blowing my mind in a sense, like, what the heck? And I guess, like, in a hospital situation where you're on morphine or something.
That might be nice for, like, people who are terminal. Yeah. And, like, in an insane amount of pain. So it's like, could you use it medicinally? Would it be bad to use it medicinally?
And that's the crazy thing, because in this...
or immoral to use it medicinally?
And this even goes, like, basically this is symbolism for drugs also. Yeah. And, like, Vonnegut even expresses...
Like self-medicating.
Yeah. Even expresses how he talks about marijuana in this. Oh, yeah. And, there's that stuff going on right now. Should it be legal? Should it not be? Like, I don't have a side. Like, as long as I think everything can be safe in small doses depending on what you do. Like, but whenever you start using it to avoid, like, basically what this thing's happening.
In an unhealthy way to, like, avoid feeling certain ways.
Yeah, and you're addicted in a sense of way. Yeah. Like, I mean, and that's fine.
Unhealthily.
Like, right. Like, there's regulations and stuff set up, but, and, like, I don't want anyone to feel like, oh gosh, they're saying that this is a bad way of living, and, like, no.
You do you, Bill.
Right, exactly. But, like, it is interesting how this correlates with that discussion. And it just makes you wonder, okay, well, this can be argued with anything. Like, and it's something that I struggle with as far as, like, video game wise. I really enjoy playing video games, But I've noticed that if I go a certain amount of time, like this threshold, it's like, oh gosh, I've ruined the day, or I've wasted all this time.
Because you were playing so much? Or
Right. And it also comes out of this thing where, like, I didn't even really know if I enjoyed the moment. Like, I'm literally so engrossed in that thing. It's like, well, did I even have fun?
Yeah.
And when you come out of it, so it goes with everything. It's not just
video games.
Video games, drugs, whatever you put when you're in this state. Mm-hmm. Man, this is hitting me hard. Like, I'm like,
feeling it deep.
Yeah, like with everything, like when you eat, when you sleep, like if you sleep, it's just like, holy cow. And that's something that blows my mind. It's the whole balance thing in general and how you have to find balance and everything. But to continue on with the questions, I guess, before I completely just shut down.
Josh has an internal struggle right now.
You're witnessing.
Let's move on before.
So basically the final question that I had set up for this discussion is, was Lou right? He was the guy who wanted to monetize this. Should we live in a hedonistically
centered world?
Or was the narrator right? Too much of a good thing is bad in a sense.
I think the narrator was right because of human nature. Humans, I don't think, have the ability, or most of them anyway, have the ability to be like, yeah, this was nice, but it's dangerous. I have access to it, but I'm not going to touch it.
Right.
I think that we could probably hold out for a while, but then we're going to be like, what the heck, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like,
at least
they were really treating me poorly. Like, you can always come up with an excuse to get whatever desire you want.
Be like, I had a hard day, I deserve this.
Yeah.
I think
with relationships too. Like with relationships, like if you do not want to be with someone, you can figure out a reason to get away in a sense. And the same thing with other, like the flip side, like someone is clearly bad for you.
Right.
You can figure out convince yourself to stay with that person.
Convince yourself and try and convince everybody else that you're doing that what you're doing isn't bad.
And so it comes down to this thing then, and I like how you said, like, we aren't good at maintaining, okay, this is my max. Or
I think that's why we have laws.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because human nature is to, if we lived hedonistically,
avoiding pain,
everybody would just be in that state of euphoria all the time. Well, maybe not everybody, but most people would, because they don't want to deal with the suckiness of life and,
And it also comes back down to the thing we talked about earlier, too. Who am I to say what the good feeling and the bad feeling is for everyone? Like, what I think is good or feels good may not feel good to others, and what I think is painful may not be painful
like a
to, like,
feel or whatever, too.
Like, I hate the sound of ice. Like, if something cold, like some scratching against a cold surface, like, it drives me insane.
I did not know that. I just know that you didn't like to see someone touch their eyeballs.
I don't like that either. But to some, and I understand that, you need to go to an optometrist and have your eyes looked at.
I need to put in my contacts.
Right. But, like, if for the purposes of this argument, if I was so focused on avoiding the bad, I'd be like, okay, optometry is illegal. Yeah. No one can go. No one can touch eyes. No one can do. Yeah, and so it's like, clearly that's not true, and you need to go.
Yeah.
To eye doctors and doctors in general, and it just goes down to that thing of who can say what is best for a situation and for certain people, and it's just tough. Life's tough, but so is there anything from the story and from the idea of hedonism or whatever that confuses you, or that you would like to kind of further go into?
I would like to, I wish there was a way for us to, that they were in that state of euphoria for 2 days.
Yeah.
I want to know what the outcome was after that. Were they left cleaning up some big messes?
Yeah, so he explains that in that thing. There were some Boy Scouts there too somehow, and there was the troop leader, and they had taken charge. They helped all the people who were sick. Like, windows had opened, a storm had happened. Some people were too close watching the storm, so they got sick. They had to be hospitalized because they were just they were cold for a long state, and so they took care of them. They got people blankets and cocoa and food and like helped.
They probably earned all their badges.
Exactly, yeah. They were having a good day, but which is funny because there was a police officer there too. You think they would have helped out in some way, but yeah. And then the doctor.
But that also brings up a good point. If you're in that state of euphoria, you stop caring about the people around you.
Yeah,
so,
in a sense, yeah. But you stop.
So it's really not great for humanity to be in that constant state of euphoria.
Yeah.
To live hedonistically is not good for humanity.
No, because if you look for the self and not the greater good of all people, yes.
Then there would be no nurses, no doctors, no medical professionals at all.
Yeah, and the same thing could be said in taking this approach and just looking at society. If you just think of society, there's people will be stepped on, and that's a whole nother discussion of like ethics and morality and figuring out, okay, this sacrifice for this group of people is better for the greater good. Like, having to make that decision would be so freaking hard. Like, I don't see how anyone is like a president or a king. Like,
yeah, because nobody's going to be happy.
No one.
No matter what you do. Because if you get rid of that state of euphoria, people are going to be unhappy that they won't be able to experience it again. Now, if you put laws on it and say, okay, we can use this conditionally, people aren't going to be happy because they're going to be like, you're violating my rights, you're limiting my choice to choose, or
let's make it like a drug thing. Like, so let's say everyone has a Walkman or a CD player or like
a Walkman. Josh?
Yeah, or like
how about like an iPod?
iPod's obsolete too. It's on your phone now. So like, let's say, okay.
As obsolete as a Walkman.
That's true. Cassettes are coming back.
Everybody has a VCR player.
Yeah, but anyway, they have this device on them that they have headphones, and it can only interact with them. So that's like you having a vape pen But then we've learned, though, that there's secondhand smoke, and that affects it in a way, too. In a sense, like, with someone feeling so euphoric, let's say, like, I'm on my high right now, I'm riding that Euphio like it's no other's business, and in front of me, some person is getting mugged.
Yeah.
And I'm just chilling, vibing, like, wow, look at them doing their thing, like, and I don't even realize the severity of the situation. Then it starts to escalate, violence comes, and this person now is, like, been stabbed in the stomach or
and
something.
They're
bleeding out, call 911, please, oh gosh. And you're just like, man.
I'm feeling great
today. Yeah. You want some of this? So, like, in a sense, and I've lost my train of thought because I'm so into the role there. But, like, even if you did make it down to the minuscule part, like you said, like, eventually it's going to affect other people in some sense. So, it's just crazy how that works. And if you were given the option of having Euphio, let's say it's an app, to download the Euphio app, would you guys do it? Leave a
leave a comment, yes or no.
Let us know if you would.
If you were able to download an app that would give you the state of euphoria that we talked about, would you do it?
And you can regulate the time, like there's a timer, it just shuts off, stops, and maybe we can even.
Would you use it conditionally?
Yeah, and then maybe we can even set it up to where like it would shut off, like it would delete itself.
Yeah.
If it was used too much, that way it's like, oh gosh, and then you couldn't get it back. You couldn't re-download it for like, I don't know, a certain amount of days or a certain amount of time.
Like it controlled how often you used it.
But then people are gonna argue, well, who's controlling it?
Yeah, that's true.
And then there's power behind that control because whatever. There's always an argument.
There always is.
But but actually we're out of time. So thanks for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your evening or when you're weak. Until next time, never stop pondering.
Bye.